Hey everyone, ready to totally ditch those history books, the ones gathering dust on your shelf. We're about to dive into a past that's seriously bursting with innovation and brilliance.
Yeah, we're talking about a period of history that's, well, practically invisible in a lot of ways, but it's anything but dull.
It's Central Asia's golden age. And let me tell you, it's about to seriously rock your world.
Oh, absolutely. Forget what you think you know about ancient history, because we're about to uncover a civilization that gives ancient Greece and Renaissance Italy a run for their money.
I'm talking bustling cities, groundbreaking discoveries. We're talking minds that were light years ahead of their time. Seriously.
And the best part, we're diving into all of this with this book, Lost Enlightenment. It's honestly amazing.
This book, let me tell you, it totally blew my mind. It completely changed how I see this whole part of the world.
Get ready for some serious aha moments.
Oh, for sure.
We're going to meet scholars like Biruni. This guy was a total polymath, read about everything under the sun, astronomy, anthropology, you name it.
And then there's Ibn Sina. His medical texts, are you kidding me? Groundbreaking stuff for centuries.
Oh, yeah. Centuries.
These weren't just names in a dusty textbook. These guys were intellectual rock stars, for real.
They were the real deal. And their stories play out against a backdrop of these magnificent cities, powerful dynasties.
Oh, the drama.
And cultural exchanges that spanned continents.
Okay, so chapter 1, 1,000 years of missing history. It just throws you right into the thick of it all.
Yeah, it does.
It starts with this incredible anecdote about Biruni and Ibn Sina, right?
Okay.
And they're having this epic back and forth about, get this, the origins of the universe.
It's the perfect example of just how alive, how intellectually on fire this whole era was. These scholars, they were not afraid to challenge ideas, to debate, to really push the limits of what people thought they knew.
And talk about challenging assumptions.
Okay.
Chapter 2, worldly urbanists, the ancient land. It completely smashes this idea that Central Asia was some historical backwater.
Oh, totally.
We're talking about cities like Balkh, Merv, Samarkand. These were megacities, metropolises that would make any city today look twice.
In the book, it mentions that Merv's outer wall was so massive that it would take you 10 days to ride around it. 10 days. Just imagine the scale of that.
It's mind-blowing. And it wasn't just about how big they were. These cities had such advanced infrastructure, bustling marketplaces, this mix of cultures. It makes you realize that globalization is not some new thing at all.
Not even close.
1,000 years ago, Central Asia was the center of this global network.
Right in the thick of it. And the Silk Road, which went right through Central Asia, that was a main artery for all of it, this constant flow of goods, ideas, everything. It was fuel for their intellectual and artistic growth.
And speaking of cultural exchange, Chapter 3, Cauldron of Skills, Ideas, and Faiths, really gets into the mix of religions in this area.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Christianity, and then eventually Islam, they all played a part in shaping the cultural landscape.
It reminds you that cultures, they're almost never just one thing, Especially in places like Central Asia, which have always been this crossroads for different civilizations.
Right.
This chapter, it also shows how open people were to new ideas during this golden age, which is really cool.
Totally. It wasn't like things were just getting mixed together and differences were disappearing. It was more like this vibrant tapestry where each thread was adding to the richness of the whole thing.
That's a great way to put it. And that's exactly what made this time and place so intellectually exciting and fertile.
Okay, get ready. Because Chapter 4, how Arabs conquered Central Asia and Central Asia then set the stage to conquer Baghdad. This is where things get really interesting. Talk about a plot twist.
It's a good one. This chapter looks at when the Arabs arrived in the 7th century and how Islam spread. It's obviously a major moment in history, but this book, it goes beyond just conquest and conversion.
It does.
It shows how Central Asia didn't just passively accept Islamic culture.
Yeah.
They took it and they shaped it, transformed it. It's pretty amazing.
The book does such a good job of showing how the Abbasid Caliphate, which ruled this huge empire from Baghdad, how much they relied on Central Asian traditions, their knowledge, how they ran things.
Totally.
Remember how we were talking about Merv, that amazing city?
Yeah.
Well, the book makes this point that Baghdad, the city of peace, might have actually been modeled after Merv's circular citadel, or Kyla. How cool is that?
It's amazing. It's like this hidden connection, and it totally changes how you see both cities.
I know, right? And speaking of influential figures, Chapter 5, Mamun. A caliph besotted with reason introduces us to this ruler who was like obsessed with knowledge.
Obsessed is the right word. Caliph Ma'mun's reign, it was a major turning point in Islamic history. He was all about translating Greek philosophy and science into Arabic. I mean, this had a huge impact on how Islamic thought developed.
That's like, imagine it's the 9th century, right? And this guy is building this massive library, the House of Wisdom, and it becomes this magnet for the smartest people from all over the Islamic world.
And the House of Wisdom, it wasn't just a library, it was a hotbed of research, translation, debate. It was the place to be if you were an intellectual heavyweight. You had scholars from every background, every faith, all coming together, sharing ideas, pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
It was like the Silicon Valley of its time, but for philosophy and science and math.
I love that analogy. And it's in chapter 6, The Stars Speak Arabic, Central Asians in the House of Wisdom, where we really see Central Asian scholars making their mark on this intellectual revolution that's happening.
Totally. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of their contributions to medicine, to math, to astronomy.
It's impressive stuff.
And the book does a great job of profiling some of these figures, like Al-Khwarizmi.
Well, Al-Khwarizmi, he's the algebra guy.
Right. And Ibn Sina al-Tabari, he was doing these amazing medical encyclopedias way back then.
It's incredible, the breadth of their knowledge.
And then there's Jabir ibn Hayyan, who everyone in the West knows as Geber. This guy was like a walking, talking Renaissance man, alchemist, chemist, pharmacist, astronomer.
You can't forget astronomer.
He did it all.
Jabir's work is super interesting because it shows just how connected the world was back then. His theories, they come from Greek, Persian, even Indian sources. It's the perfect example of this cross-cultural exchange happening during this golden age.
And get this, the book even says that the word gibberish might actually come from his name. Talk about a legacy.
Language is wild. It's like a history book in itself if you know what to look for.
I know, it's amazing. It makes you wonder how many other words we use every day have roots in this incredible time period.
It really makes you think, about all these connections, past and present. Speaking of connections, Chapter 7, Khorasan, Central Asia's rising star, it takes us deeper into this world, this time focusing on Khorasan, especially Nishapur.
Oh, Nishapur. Imagine, this city, buzzing with intellectuals, artists, but also, full of political intrigue.
Oh, I see it.
It's giving, real-life Game of Thrones vibes, but with, more books and a little less.
Yeah.
Well, you get the idea.
Right. Less bloodshed. That's a great way to put it, though. Vivid. But amidst all that drama, this chapter introduces us to this thinker named al-Balkhi. He was writing about psychology, human behavior, in a way that feels surprisingly modern.
Seriously, it's like, I don't know, reading a psychology textbook from 1,000 years ago. He even had advice on mental well-being, which is wild. It shows how far ahead they were in understanding the human mind.
It really does. And it wasn't just about philosophy. It was about using that knowledge to actually help people, to make their lives better. Oh, and this chapter also touches on the rise of Sufism.
Sufism. Okay.
Yeah, it's a mystical kind of Islam. And we meet the epic poet Ferdowsi and his masterpiece, the Shahnameh. Have you heard of it?
The Shahnameh. Oh, yeah. It's like the Lord of the Rings of Persian literature. This huge epic, heroes, kings, mythical creatures, the whole deal.
Exactly. And it wasn't just entertainment either. It played this huge role in keeping Persian history, their myths, their whole cultural identity alive. You know what I love about it? The story about how Ferdowsi hid these little critiques of his patron, Mahmud of Ghazni, right in the poems.
Talk about subversive.
I know, right? Talk about a power move. It just shows that even back then, artists were finding ways to, speak truth to power through their art. So good.
So good. Speaking of powerful patrons, Chapter 8, the Samanid Dynasty, Central Asia's Renaissance. This takes us to a whole dynasty that was like the Medici family of Central Asia.
The Samanids, they were all about that high culture life. Grand libraries, art patronage. They created this cosmopolitan atmosphere, and scholars came from everywhere to be a part of it.
They were like the place to be.
I know. And their capital, Bukhara, it became this beacon of knowledge, this hub of creativity. It was amazing.
And the architecture they left behind, are you kidding me?
Oh, tell me about it.
The tomb of Ismail Samani, it's still standing today. It's like this, this perfect snapshot of their legacy.
It gives me chills just thinking about it. It's like looking at a building frozen in time.
Right. Okay, this chapter also introduces us to, another giant of this era, Muhammad al-Bukhari.
Oh, al-Bukhari, he's a big deal. He put together this massive collection of the Prophet Muhammad's sayings, traditions. It's called the Sahih al-Bukhari. If you're Sunni Muslim, this book is essential.
It's pretty amazing to think that a scholar from, over 1,000 years ago could have that kind of lasting impact on a major world religion.
Right. It really shows you the power of ideas, how far they can travel, how long they can last. Okay, ready for a change of pace. Chapter 9. Gurganj under the Mamuns. A new capital, new horizons, takes us to a new dynasty, the Mamuns of Khwarazm. And their capital city, Gurganj, oh man, it was something else.
This is where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
The Mamuns, they were all about pushing the boundaries of knowledge, like hardcore.
Oh yeah, they were patrons of science, math, philosophy, the whole 9 yards, and they turned Gurganj into this, intellectual playground.
The book talks about these scientific evenings they used to have at the Mamun Palace. Can you imagine? Scholars getting together, debating, discussing all the latest breakthroughs, like their version of a TED Talk, but with maybe, flowing robes and a bit more astronomy.
Okay, I love that. And it was in Gurganj where Biruni and Ibn Sina are intellectual rock stars. Remember them? They had those legendary debates.
I know. The book describes their back and forth as fierce, but respectful. It was a true clash of the titans, intellectually speaking.
Totally. And this chapter really digs into Biruni's work, his astronomy, his math, even his anthropology.
Hey, anthropology, really?
Yeah. Did you know he wrote this whole study on Indian culture based on his own travels, his own observations? The guy was brilliant.
He really got around.
He did. And the best part, he calculated the Earth's circumference, and he was incredibly accurate, using just the tools and the knowledge they had back then.
No way.
I'm telling you, mind-blowing.
Seriously, it makes you wonder what Biruni could have done with today's technology. The guy was a genius.
Absolutely. But hold on tight, because Chapter 10, Turks take the stage. This is where our historical journey takes a bit of a turn.
It's a dramatic turn.
You could say that. This is where we see the rise of the Turkic peoples. And they brought this whole new energy to the region, politically, culturally, you name it.
Okay, so we're shaking things up a bit. It's a good reminder that the Islamic world was not this, monolithic thing.
Not at all. It was incredibly diverse, so many different cultures, languages, traditions, all woven together.
We were a melting pot.
Exactly. And the Turkic peoples, they added their own unique flavor to the mix.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. They might have had this warrior background, but a lot of these rulers, they were big supporters of learning and the arts. They built mosques, palaces, libraries.
They weren't messing around.
Nope. They understood that true power, it wasn't just about conquering lands, it was about cultivating a thriving culture. And they definitely left their mark on the architecture of Central Asia, that's for sure. Oh, and the book talks about Mahmud of Kashgar.
Okay, who was he? Another conqueror?
Actually, he was a scholar, not a ruler. And get this, he created this massive dictionary of the Turkic languages. Can you imagine? Before printing presses, before computers, the dedication.
That's next level commitment to knowledge right there.
Yeah.
Wow, a dictionary. That's hardcore.
Talk about dedication, right? I mean, compiling a dictionary back then, that was a serious undertaking. And speaking of monumental, Chapter 11, Culture under a Turkic Marauder, Mahmud of Ghazni. This guy, he definitely left his mark on history, even if it was, well, often written in blood, you could say.
Yeah, Mahmud of Ghazni, he was, what do they call it, a complex character, right? Like a brilliant military leader, expanded his empire big time, but also known for being, well, let's just say ruthless. The book talks about how he got crazy rich from all his conquests, but then used some of that wealth to build mosques, libraries, even a university.
It's true, he did. Mahmud, he was a patron of the arts and sciences, for sure. Although some people say it was more about, looking powerful and legit than a true love of knowledge. But his court, it was definitely the place to be if you were a scholar and an artist back then.
Yeah. Like what was he, giving away free lattes and holding poetry slams or something?
Not exactly, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
It even says in the book that his summer capital, Ghazni, people said it was on par with Baghdad in terms of splendor and beauty.
Wow, he was trying to out-Baghdad Baghdad. That's
Yeah.
saying something. Okay, so we've got this warrior king, loves a good poem, but then boom, chapter, Tremors under Seljuk rule, Ghazali and the Sufi turn. It's like the mood totally shifts. We're in the world of the Seljuk Turks now, and Sufism is on the rise.
It's a fascinating shift. The Seljuks, they were a force to be reckoned with, and they brought this whole new set of ideas, priorities, everything. Their vizier, Nizam al-Mulk, he was the brains behind this whole network of madrasas, these formal religious schools. And let me tell you, these schools, they ended up having a massive impact on Islamic intellectual life going forward.
So it's like education is becoming more, I don't know, organized?
Yeah.
standardized?
Exactly. And the book makes this interesting points like, yeah, the madrasas, they made education more structured, helped spread knowledge more widely, but they also tended to focus on a more, I guess you could say, traditional religious-based curriculum.
Right. So maybe a bit less room for like free thinking.
Yeah.
Exploring different ideas outside of, the religious texts.
You got it. It's like a subtle shift away from that free-flowing, multidisciplinary approach we saw earlier in the Golden Age. But it's also during this time that Sufism really takes off, with its emphasis on personal experience, spiritual enlightenment, all of that.
Right, Sufism. And this chapter introduces some really cool figures like Omar Khayyam, the poet.
Oh, I love Omar Khayyam.
Mathematician, astronomer. His poems, they still resonate today. Talk about a Renaissance man.
And then there's Al-Ghazali. This guy was a giant, a true heavyweight of Islamic thought. He was wrestling with some big questions: faith, reason, what is reality, all that good stuff.
Deep thoughts.
The deepest. His work had a huge impact on Islamic philosophy and theology.
This chapter, I'll be honest, it was a lot to take in. But I loved how it showed all these different intellectual currents, kind of swirling around and bumping into each other.
It shows you how dynamic this period was, for sure. Okay, are you ready for things to get real? Because chapter 13, the Mongol century. From carnage to high culture, it's like a punch in the gut. We're talking about the Mongol conquests.
Oh man, the Mongols. Not exactly known for their, shall we say, gentle touch.
Right. The devastation they unleashed, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Cities wiped out, so many lives lost. It's like the whole cultural fabric of Central Asia just gets ripped apart.
Brutal.
Absolutely brutal. But here's the fascinating thing. Even in the midst of all this destruction, you see this cultural resurgence happening. It's wild. The Mongols, once they'd, conquered everything in sight, they actually become patrons of the arts and sciences.
Wait, really? The Mongols?
Yep. They set up these new centers of learning, like the Maraga Observatory in Persia, and some of the most brilliant astronomers of that time, they flocked there.
That's crazy. Like this weird mix of destruction and creation, like they were trying to rebuild what they'd broken. Or maybe put their own stamp on it.
It's definitely a complicated story. And it's during this time that we meet Rumi. Have you heard of him?
Rumi, the poet.
That's the one. Sufi mystic, his poems about love, longing, the divine, they're just timeless.
Oh yeah, Rumi's amazing. His poetry is just beautiful, just blows me away. It's incredible that something so beautiful could come out of such a dark and violent time.
It really makes you think about the resilience of the human spirit, doesn't it? That even when we're faced with unimaginable hardship, we can still create, we can still find meaning, connect with something bigger than ourselves. It's really powerful.
Beautifully said. Okay, so we've got the Mongols looming large, and then chapter 14, Tamerlane and his successors, a new empire, a new synthesis, swoops in with yet another larger-than-life figure, Timur, a.k.a. Tamerlane.
Oh, Timur. Another conqueror up there with Genghis Khan in terms of, ambition. But he also saw himself as this builder, someone who was restoring what had been lost. He was obsessed with architecture, poured tons of resources into making his capital city, Samarkand, absolutely stunning.
And the book does not hold back, let me tell you. It describes Samarkand as this, jaw-dropping spectacle of mosques, madrasas, palaces, the whole shebang, designed to show off just how wealthy and powerful Timur's empire was.
Oh, absolutely. He even brought in the best artisans and craftspeople from all over his empire. He wasn't playing around. It was like he was trying to create this new center of the world, a city that would rival anything, anywhere in its beauty and its grandeur. He was going for it.
Ambition. I like it. But then, just as we're getting to know Timur, boom, the empire passes to his successors, and we meet Ulugh Beg. Now, this guy is fascinating. Prince, astronomer, patron of the sciences.
Yeah.
He did it all.
Ulugh Beg was something else. He builds this massive observatory in Samarkand, state-of-the-art, light years ahead of its time, and he's producing these incredibly accurate star charts. It's mind-blowing when you think about the tools they had back then.
It really is. Okay, so we've got this golden age, incredible highs, devastating lows, and it kind of culminates with this final burst of scientific achievement, which brings us to the last chapter, chapter 15, the legacy, the Lost Enlightenment.
The million-dollar question.
Right. Why did this amazing, brilliant period fade? What happened?
It's something historians are still trying to figure out, Was it political instability, economic decline? Did religious orthodoxy kind of take over? Or was it some combination of all those factors, plus some we haven't even thought of?
The book seems to say there's no easy answer.
Hmm.
Like, it wasn't just one big dramatic thing that happened. It was more like this slow burn, this gradual process of decline.
Exactly. It's complicated.
It is. So what do we take away from all of this? What does this Lost Enlightenment tell us about Central Asia, about the Islamic world, about, I don't know, history itself?
You know, for me, if there's one big takeaway, it's that history is full of surprises. That amazing things, groundbreaking discoveries, they can happen in the most unexpected places, in the most unexpected times. And that the story of civilization, it's way more complex, way more interconnected than we often give it credit for.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Wow, what a journey. From those bustling cities, the intellectual debates that were on fire, empires rising and falling, this deep dive into Lost Enlightenment, it's really changed how I see things.
Me too.
And for everyone listening, I hope this has, sparked your curiosity. There's so much out there to learn about. So many hidden chapters of history just waiting to be discovered.
Absolutely.
So next time someone says ancient history, don't just think pyramids and gladiators. Remember the incredible things that were happening in Central Asia during their golden age. It's a period that deserves to be remembered, celebrated, everything. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep those minds hungry